Brody, what gets you up in the morning to bring the Magic the Gathering morning show to all the folks out there tuning in? What is it that drives you? Well, the sentiment in the world of Magic the Gathering is changing after some reflection and checking out some videos out there. There's some people that seem to think that this market cycle is different than market cycles of the past. It just feels different than what has typically happened in the world of Magic the Gathering with regards to prices, the reserve list, expensive cards, Magic the Gathering finance, and the sentiment amongst old players versus new players. First of all, I'd like to inspire anyone who is out there in the world with the positive attitude to get up each and every morning with some energy and to do the best that you can, because we are all part of the human race. And let's face it, it is a race for many reasons. And I don't mean like the color of your skin, I mean a race, like a foot race. I spent a lot of days getting up early in my prime working years. And every single day that I got up early, it was very lonely. There wasn't anybody around. You get up, you get up in the morning, maybe do some push-ups. You start your day and you're all by yourself. And then you get up early and you say, you know what? I'm going to make a difference in life. I'm going to make a difference in what's going on around me. I'm going to do the best that I can, even though there's nobody around. When nobody's watching, I'm going to try to do the best that I can to put myself ahead of everybody else in the world. When people are sleeping, I am going to be getting up and making hay and doing something to move life forward in in the world. When you come from nothing and you've got to make something out of it, it gets a little bit lonely all the time. But I want to encourage folks who are out there in the world to get up in the morning. And even though there's nobody around, but the bro is around, I'll be here for you. Even though there's nobody around and times can get tough and mentally it's a little bit draining because you get up early in the morning and you've got something on your list from the night before and you got to get up and you got to do it. You got to put some time into something, whether it's crafting your trade or learning a new skill set. You got to get up in the morning and put your best foot forward. And it's hard to have some energy to do that. But I want to tell you folks, it's worth it. If you do it, and it's like the market. Time in the market is better than timing the market. And what better place to invest your time than yourself and for your loved ones and for your family and for those who are close to you to get something better? So the race, while people are snoozing and people are cruising, you know how many weekends I spent just keeping an even head on my shoulder, years and years and years, thinking, well, while other folks are going out on the weekend and making silly decisions and causing a lot of noise, then they got to sleep in till about 10 or 11 o'clock the next day because they got no energy left. I'm going to be the one who gets up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 or whatever it is because I've got something to do. I've got a purpose. I've got a purpose and I've got energy and I'm going to get up and there's going to be nobody around and it's going to be very lonely. But after some time, I'll tell you, it makes a difference because the race that is the human race is only one footstep at a time. One single footstep at a time. If you take each and every day as a single footstep upon your journey and you get up and you face the music each and every day, a little voice inside your head says, you know what? You can do it, Brody. You can get up. I know there's nobody around here to cheer you on or to give you a little push or give you that encouragement, but I know you've got something to do. And I want you to know that that is a key to winning the race. All right. So what does it mean to never give up? It means to get up each and every day with a little bit of purpose and some energy and give that time and that focus to yourself to make the world a better place, make your life a better place for yourself and your loved ones. And then later, those are the difficult things. You got to craft your trade, or whether it's learning a new skill set or reading or studying or taking tests or going to school, you put in that time and eventually you're going to look back in the rearview mirror and all those people that you might have grown up with or you might have spent a lot of time with, you're going to find that you're miles and miles and miles ahead of them. Now, it gets a little bit cloudy out there because you look out in the world, especially people who are the haves and the have-nots, and you look and you say, one day I will have my own house, or one day I will start that business, or one day I will have that reserve list card, or one day I will have my playset of volcanic islands. And you look out there at the folks that already have those things and you wonder, and you scratch your head and you dust your eyes because you can't believe why they have it and you don't. Well, there's different reasons out there, but when you come from absolutely nothing, maybe just a family that loves you or somebody who loves you, it's the only thing that you need to keep going. Trust me, it is something that gives me comfort now that I'm getting to be a little bit withered and gray in the beard. Looking back at some of the time that I invested in myself and in my family and my loved ones, getting up each and every morning with some energy to face the challenges of the day, knowing that there may not be a big payoff that day, but it's just one footstep on your journey each and every day when you get up. So now let's get to a little bit of talk as to why we're here doing this. There's been some change in sentiment in the Magic the Gathering markets. People are saying that new players don't have the nostalgia that old fuddy-duddies like myself do. Old folks that have been playing the game for years and years, they have this nostalgia for the card that new players that are young and coming up, say you're 13 and 14, 15, 20 years old, how does somebody who's new to the game of Magic the Gathering is just starting to play going to have the same sense of nostalgia that older players do? So let's try that. Let's try to foster some Let's try and foster some of those younger players into the game and help them on their Magic the Gathering finance journey by encouraging them to make good decisions. And when you look at some of the prices of some of these Magic cards, they seem so far out of reach. How was 13-year-old Timmy supposed to come up with the $900 for an underground sea? It's very, very daunting and difficult. Well, you got to look at the signals that the world is giving us. Now, Magic is a game for players 13 years and up. And when you head over to the stores that are selling Magic the Gathering cards, especially new cards and boxes, I don't know a single 13-year-old that's going to be able to come up with $450 for the new collector's box or even be able to buy on pre-order each and every one of the new sets that is available today. Back in my day, I had to ask my papa. Papa, I really want a box of Magic the Gathering cards. Can you please get me this box of Magic cards? And, you know, there was the incentive. Well, did you do your homework? Well, did you do this? Well, did you make practice for your for your baseball practice? If you've been a good boy and that was sort of a reward where, your parents worked hard to get you some cardboard to play with because a box of Magic cards at that days, I remember my very first box of Magic the Gathering, my papa bought it for me. It was $200. And I must thank him dearly because the days of that was for a box of revised and that was that was really expensive. Even basketball shoes or sports shoes. You wanted a new set of shoes to go to school for sports or PE or physical education. You had to come up with the money to buy those new sneakers, $100. Oh, I just look back and I think of all the things that my parents did for me to try to give me the best start on my foot race each and every day to try and keep up and keep their little Brody going in the world. So make sure you give a little bit of an appreciation to those folks with the idea that someday things are going to fall back squarely on your shoulders where you're going to have to be the one who gets up each and every day and puts your best foot forward to try and make a difference. And when you get up early in the morning, try and face the world with a little bit of energy. How do we foster new players into the game of Magic the Gathering? Players who are looking at the world of Magic the Gathering and they're saying, you know what? This isn't for me. I've got no nostalgia for the older cards because they weren't printed during my generation. I've got no nostalgia for the reserve list. In fact, I don't care about the reserve list. The reserve list clearly wasn't made for me. It was made for an older generation of people. Let's face it, the people who started playing Magic in the 90s and just a little bit beyond that, that's the folks that the reserve list was made for, the promise of the reserve list. So it means little to nothing to new players picking up the game in 2010 or 2005 or 2015 or even today. So how do you make sense of the world of Magic the Gathering when you're looking at some of these cardboard singles and they cost so darn much? Well, ask yourself, do you like tracking the prices of Magic cards? You can join me if you like to crack open packs and shuffle up stacks each and every day with tracking the prices of Magic the Gathering because I would like to get the fun into your collection. We want to get it done. We want to try and find some underappreciated Magic the Gathering cards that we can pick up that are reasonable, that might have some good long-term value. And we did a series, and I think I might pick that up again. It's called Brody's Bottom 10. There's some cheap reserve list cards out there that you two can buy for $1 or $2. They've got some play value, but I find it that the younger players don't necessarily have too much nostalgia for these cards. So whether you're picking them up because you like the cards, you want to play with the cards, or you think maybe one day this card will go up in price. Now, like I said, there's been some changes in the financial markets. And I would like to draw your attention to this chart because even my little brother, Rudy, says that this financial cycle seems different than the last one. Now, you wonder, how do people get that entire set of alpha? Or how do people get that entire set of revised? Or that entire set of dual lands? Well, let's consider the fact that all markets are cyclical. And if you're just a working man for the working man or woman doing the best that you can, draw your attention to this chart. George Tritch's periods when to make money. So let's take a look at George Tritch's periods when to make money. It's an interesting chart if you're trying to figure out the financial markets and how is it these old folks have done so well. You think, well, they're just old, so they bought everything when things were cheap. And that's true to some point. It is. If you were buying the Magic the Gathering dual lands when the prices were cheap, yes, you had an advantage. And, during that time, money bought different things. Money didn't come as easily as it does now. The rate that they're printing money these days is absolutely staggering. It's baffling. It's mind blowing. So even when you look back at when we were buying revised boxes of Magic cards for $200, to come up with $200 in 1995 was a whole lot of money. It really was. All right. Why do the old folks have so much money? Well, it's either the fact that they bought things for cheap, or when you look at generational wealth and the way that it's created in the world, it seems to be that there's some old families that tend to make money year over year, hand over fist, because they've understood this principle of how markets are cyclical. Now, there's been some sentiment in the world saying that, well, it feels different this time. We've been in a bit of a recession, a little bit of an economic downturn since the last little bit, and it hasn't really come back. And like, we should be in a boom market. We should be in a bull market right now. Like, what's happening? It's taking so long. So I would advise anybody who gets up, anybody who's part of the human race, and I mean the race, to better yourself, to get to the finish line and be able to be retired. Perhaps that's the goal. I would look at this chart and try to understand how generational wealth is created. And this chart from George Tritch, I've put it up here before, but I would like to draw some attention to it because folks think that things are different in this market cycle. Now, this is a tool that's been around since 1875, and it can be extrapolated due to using an algorithm up into the future many, many years. And if we look here on this chart, it's extrapolated out to the year 2053, but you can still move this chart using the basic algorithm of how this chart works and move it into beyond 2053. So this chart will still be relative beyond the day listed on this chart because you can just follow this pattern that George Tritch has listed out for us here. So This is how people who buy real estate and tycoons and people who buy businesses, and when you hear about businesses being bought up by bigger businesses, the small fish being eaten up by the bigger fish, being eaten up by the next fish, by the shark, by the whale, by the octopus, by the kraken. There's so many people, and there's people who have started businesses from nothing. The fellow who started WhatsApp, I think that's two folks who started an app in their basement, and it cost them only a couple of $1,000s to develop it, but they put some time into it for themselves. They probably got up each and every day and they had an idea that they were passionate about. And they probably put hours and hours and hours into their education trying to figure out how to code and write script and put apps together. And then finally they came up with something, a project that was called WhatsApp, and it was interesting. And then another bigger fish came along and said, we would like that. So whether it's 3D printing, whether it's 3D scanning, whether it's using computers, whether it's coding, whether it's working with your hands like the bro man, crafting your trade and getting good at something, there's no shortcuts in life. You need to put in, like, how did Michael Jordan get all those championship rings? Because he just stepped on the court and he was able to make all those amazing shots and just be a success. The fella put 10,000 hours into every single move that he practiced and played. So when it came time for game time, he perfected it to the point where nobody else in the world can touch it. And you think there were folks out there watching him and encouraging him out on the court, dribbling and shooting and practicing that same move over and over again? That's the same as your education. That's the same as your skill set. That's the same as anything that you do in life. There's not going to be anybody standing there watching you while you're putting in those countless, thankless hours to get good at something. And even with the folks who created WhatsApp, eventually they get good at something and they put out a product, and then all of a sudden people love it. And then some company comes along and says, I'll buy it. Steve Jobs, another example of that. So these are people who have made it, right? They're success. And I want you to be successful. That is what I'm trying to tell you. I want you to be successful in all your endeavors in life. And I want to give you some motivation to do that by getting up with me each and every day and have some talk, some discussion, some fun. And it should be fun. It shouldn't be thankless. You should find something that you love doing, and then you won't work a day in your life. So let's check this out. Periods when to make money. So this is sort of a chart that I found over the last few years, and I've been struggling with some aspects in life. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely some big challenges out there, and as you get along down your journey, the challenges get bigger. Just like if you want to get into modern, that's a challenge. You want to get into standard, that's a challenge. You want to play pioneer, you want to play legacy, that's a heck of a challenge to get those pieces of cardboard to put that deck together. You want to play vintage, that's going to be another challenge to get those game pieces, as they're called, right? But then you say, okay, everything in life is a challenge anyway. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and see how this works. So just trust me when I say it. I'm going to be following this chart, and I hope you should too. And this is how generational wealth is created and how the long living families that are around in the world that seem to be getting richer and richer. How do they do it? Well, it's because during periods of bad times and hard times, and don't kid yourself. I'm here to be a little bit of a realness. It's not all sunshines and rainbows. We are in periods of hard times, and we have been for some time. When we look at and a reason I bring this chart up is because I saw some videos and some sentiment in the Magic the Gathering market saying that it feels different this time. And I draw your attention to this chart because it says clearly, I see across the bottom is periods of hard times. And during periods of hard times, you'll experience low prices and a good time to buy stocks, corner lots, goods, etc., and hold until the boom occurs. So this is when people are having to walk away from their houses because they can't afford the payment. They can't have to walk away from that new car because they can't afford the payment. They have to sell their Magic the Gathering cards for cheap because they're a non-essential item. I need groceries. They have to try to try to get liquid cash to make their liabilities. And that's when the people who have been cyclically paying attention to this buy up people's assets for cheap. Don't kid yourself. In this day and age, there are big conglomerates that know that this chart exists and that people, when they're suffering from hard times, will be taken advantage of, and they will buy. And if you look at the auctions is another very good tell of the financial stability of the market. when you look at auctions, when auctions are full of equipment, full of products, full of goods, full of wares, people are taking things to the sale to just try and offload them to get some kind of cash. That's when the folks who have been paying attention and using this chart to their advantage, who have been sitting on cash for a long period of time, come in and they scoop up what is other people's goods for cheap. Real estate, goods, wares, products, all the things that money can buy. So, like, pay attention to this chart, because according to this chart, period C across the bottom says periods of hard times. And this is where people, if you can make decisions in this day and age where you're either investing in yourself or you're buying the things that money can buy, when in 2023, we're only just coming up, we're just the third 3 months into 2024. We're only 3 months into 2024, and this thing has got a 3-year uptick to 2026 where it shows periods of good times. Now, 2026 is periods of good times. And when you look at this here, I like periods of good times. That's when you know you're making good money at your job. There's lots of extra money to go around to buy Magic the Gathering cards. You can maybe buy a new car. You might take a little vacation. You got some time off. You can afford it. And you got money in the bank. But we haven't had a real periods of good times since going back to, say, 2012, according to this chart, right? And when you're a young person, say you're 13 years of age, or you're 14 years of age, or you're 20 years of age, or you're 15 years of age, you look and you think, how come the people in their 30s are doing so good? And it looks really tough for me, because it depends when you're just the luck of the draw when you're born. This will depend on where in this curve that you start your journey. So periods of hard times is where we're at, and periods of good times is B here. Years of good times, high prices, the time to sell stocks and values of all kinds. So what the big fish are doing, the conglomerates and the big players are out there right now. They're taking advantage, and these are like financial predators who are like trying to buy your home for nothing. They're trying to buy your car for cheap. They're looking at stuff that you've had listed on Facebook Marketplace, and I'll give you $5 for that, because they know that people need money. So period of good, and it's not a period of good times. So you got to wait until periods of good times where there are high prices and the times to sell stocks of all different kinds. If you look across the top, and this is years of which panics have occurred and will occur again. And we're not going to talk too much history, but I know there's some folks on this channel that watch history, and some of these dates will make sense to you, of years of which panics in the world have occurred and will occur again. We're not going to discuss what they were, but if you look at these dates, I think you can probably draw your own conclusions as to what those panics were that occurred and will occur again. According to this chart, we shouldn't see another panic in the world until 2035, where we're going to have another crash straight back down to periods of hard times in 2039. So plan accordingly. Understand that these markets are cyclical, and those folks that say it feels different this time, I implore them to take a look at this chart to try and understand these generational wealth creation cycles that are apparent. So right now we're coming off of a period of hard times of 2023. We'll have a 3-year tick up to 2026 where times are good, and that is why I keep on saying that we won't see a tick up in the price of non-essentials, which Magic the Gathering cards are. They're not essential. You don't need them to live. You can't eat them unless you're burning them in your home fireplace to make heat. They're not essential items. Collectibles, superfluous items that aren't essentials. This is when things like food, shelter are expensive. And during the time periods of good times is when you want to start. This is when the economy should be turning around, and there'll be better earning power for folks, and maybe a little bit of stability, less inflation, and such. And that's when you want to offload those things that money can buy for a premium price, and then wait. No, don't blow it. Don't blow it. There's a saying that they say, please, Lord, let there be another boom. I promise not to piss it all away this time, right? People think that periods of good times will last for absolutely ever, and I assure you they don't. So when they do, this is another thing. The folks who have put in time learning a new skill set, learning a trade, or learning computer coding, or in the last couple of years, the people who have just hunkered down and put some serious time and effort into themselves to learn a skill set will do very well in 2025 and 2026 and even in this year, because the last couple of years was so depressing, people didn't want to do anything. But if you hunker down and you get up each and every day and you put your best foot forward and you try to invest in yourself and say, you know what, I don't really want to focus too much on what's going on in the outside world. I'm going to focus on myself, my family. I'm going to get really good at, I'm going to be the Michael Jordan of whatever it is I want to do. When the game day comes in 2026 and periods of good times, those people are going to be in high demand because they're going to be the best at what they do in their field, and they're going to be able to charge and ask for no matter whatever they want. And I want that to be you. I want you to be that person. All right. So let's get onto some funny stuff here this morning. I got a couple of interesting things to discuss in the stock desk. I just wanted to clear the air here with people who are saying it feels different this time, Brody. To me, I'm looking at this saying, don't be fooled.